Socrates didn't leave behind a library or a single authored map of truth. But his questions still travel through our minds like a current under the ice, reminding us that wisdom begins not with answers, but with a stubborn, careful listening. The modern world pretends to be solved, yet the air is thick with certainty that never feels certain to the ear that doubts. So we turn to paradox. Wisdom is less a possession than a practice, a way of moving through thought with restraint and courage. Open with this. You don't arrive at wisdom by collecting cleverness, but by sharpening the questions you're willing to bear. The 5 lessons I want to explore are not relics carved in marble. They're daily disciplines you can practice in a crowded city, at a kitchen table, in a meeting you would rather escape. They are, in a single breath, a method for living courageously in the gray areas where most certainty dissolves. First lesson, question everything you're sure of. Socrates was famously unafraid of being wrong, because being wrong is where learning begins. Imagine a map that redraws itself as you walk it, streets bending to reveal what you didn't notice before. In a world of headlines that claim to know the whole story, the truly brave move is to pause in a voice that sounds like a friend asks, "What are we missing here?" It's not hostility to authority. It's an investment in clarity. The habit of relentless inquiry becomes a quiet rebellion against the tyranny, a way to keep your compass from rusting in the ocean of noise. Second lesson, know thyself, not to inflate ego, but to free responsibility. Self-knowledge in Socratic style, wisest, a performance of introspection. It's a disciplined census of your own temptations, biases, and blind spots. Picture a workshop where your mind is the instrument, and your judgments are raw metal that must be tempered. When you recognize the moment you're about to justify what you want to feel rather than what is true, you gain a shield against the letting go of things that matter. The payoff isn't smug awareness. It's the power to choose with more honesty, even when honesty hurts. Third lesson, the unexamined life is not a luxury, but a practical constraint. We're all busy. We're all pushing through routines, and yet the question remains, what kind of life do you want to inhabit in your late hours? When the day's urgencies fade, Socrates invites us to audit our priorities the way a craftsman checks the. Sometimes examining life means abandoning a path that is familiar but hollow. And sometimes it means choosing a path with more. The point is not to produce a flawless life, but to ensure you're living with intention, not just reaction. Fourth lesson, knowledge is provisional, not final. The world doesn't hand out final drafts. It offers questions that revise themselves when you walk a little further into them. The modern mind craves certainty as if it were a possession, a shield against vulnerability. But wisdom, as Socrates implies, is the humility to say, "I don't know yet," and the stubborn patience to search for better questions. Think of knowledge as a workshop remixing old notes into new melodies. The more you practice with uncertainty, the more you discover that your earlier answers were not failures, but scaffolds, temporary supports that carried you to a higher view. Fifth lesson, have the courage to change your mind and the manners to do it well. Change is not a betrayal of yourself, but a refinement of your character. The hardest part is the moment of letting the old belief go without shaming the person you were when you first held it. Socrates would savor the tension between stubbornness and openness, the stubbornness to pursue truth with discipline, the openness to adjust course when the evidence shifts. In practice, this means seeking conversations that feel more like tuning forks than battlegrounds. It means welcoming honest critique, even when it stings. It means acting on better understanding, not clinging to old comfort. A turning point arrives when you realize wisdom is not a monument you visit, but a practice you inhabit. These 5 lessons form a training regime for a thinking life. You wake up in the morning with a plan to question, to know, to examine, to accept provisional truths, and to stay ready to rethink. It's a path that makes you less certain in the worst ways and more capable in the best. Because certainty without nuance becomes brittle. while nuance without courage becomes indecisive. So here is the deeper truth. Socrates teaches us that wisdom is density of care for the quality of your attention, care for the consequences of your beliefs, care for the neighbors and communities your ideas touch. The questions you ask are not stray thoughts. They're the scaffolding of a moral architecture, the courage to hold complexity, to endure discomfort, to revise your stance, and to keep showing up to the hard conversations. That is the enduring gift of his method. Let us bring it home with a practical invitation. Each day, pick one belief you're confident about and test it the way a scientist tests a theory. Write down the strongest argument against it you can imagine. Then, sit with the discomfort. Listen to the counterpoints from people you respect, and rewrite your position if the evidence deserves it. Do this not to prove yourself right, but to prove that your mind can grow without breaking. This is how wisdom travels from the pages of an ancient city to the schedules of a modern life. If you carry one idea forward, let it be this. The value of thinking is not in the zeal to win, but in the discipline to learn. Socrates would not have wanted you to win a debate as much as he would have, but as a living habit that makes you more human, more attentive, more courageous in the face of uncertainty. The 5 lessons are the drill sergeant, the guide, and the quiet mentor inside you. They push you toward clarity, toward responsibility, toward a life that matters when the crowd has stopped listening, toward a mind that can endure the long night of doubt and still choose to act. Now the question remains for you, the thinker listening in the dim glow of a screen. What would a wiser version of you do with the next ambiguous choice you face? What belief will you test this week? What part of your routine will you revise to invite more honesty into your decisions? If you let Socrates' questions travel with you, they will not scare you into silence. They will awaken you into the kind of thinking that refuses to settle for easy answers. That is the legacy of a man who never stopped asking questions, not to humiliate the ignorant, but to liberate the curious, not to accumulate certainty, but to cultivate the courage to admit what we don't know, so that we can become something more honest, more precise, and more humane. The road is longer than you expect, and the weather will change. But the destination remains clear, a mind willing to grow, a soul willing to be corrected, a life that keeps asking the hard, beautiful questions. Practically, wisdom becomes an operating system for your days, not a shelf of trophies. The 5 lessons stop being abstract when you turn them into small, repeatable acts you can perform before breakfast, before a meeting, before you scroll. Today, try this 5-minute drill. Pick one belief you defend with the most certainty. Pause the impulse to defend it instantly. List 3 reasons it might be wrong, not excuses to justify it. Then craft the strongest counterargument you fear admitting. Finally, rewrite the belief so it survives the critique, or replace it with a sharper, more accurate claim. Do nothing dramatic, just a quiet rewrite in your notebook. If you can't salvage it, only edit without apology. Humility undercuts dogma and clears space. In a conversation once, I watched a colleague watch the other person's point crumble under a single, patient question. Not hostility, just a slow, precise tug at the thread. The belief loosened, the room shifted, and the room's energy shifted with it. That moment wasn't victory or defeat. It was gravity and exposure of what held us back when we believed we were already fully formed. The true gift of Socratic method isn't righteousness. It's responsibility to our own future and to the people who bear the consequences of our ideas. When you practice this, you don't chase certainty as a possession. You cultivate a stance. You become someone who can walk into ambiguity with calm, who can act decisively on what is needed now while still leaving room for better understanding tomorrow. The 5th lesson, changing your mind graciously, becomes a way of life, not a trick for arguments. It's a discipline of care, for accuracy, for others, for the integrity of your choices. So the practice compounds. Question a little deeper. Know yourself a little more with each day. Examine the life you're living in your hours of quiet. Accept provisional truths with enough humility to revise. And change your mind when the evidence warrants it, without losing your sense of moral direction. This isn't mere skepticism. It's a quiet bravery that keeps conversation alive and action effective. As you move through your week, let the 5 lessons shadow you like a reliable ally. Curiosity with restraint. Self-knowledge as responsibility. Life as a practical audit. Knowledge as provisional. And mind steadfast enough to revise when a map changes. The road is longer than a single debate, but every step forward is a measure of the kind of thinker you're becoming. What choice will you revisit first? What belief could you test with mercy and precision? And what small shift in your daily routine could keep you moving toward